Welcome to our sleep video series, your easiest path to drifting off naturally. These videos are designed to gently guide your mind toward rest. They work in a few simple ways. First, we give your mind something lightly engaging to focus on, not too exciting, not too dull. Just enough to keep your thoughts from wandering, but not enough to keep you awake. Next, through our proprietary neuro-relaxation technique, the pacing of the audio gradually slows as the video progresses. This subtle change encourages your mind to slow with it. The slowdown doesn't happen in a straight line. It follows carefully crafted patterns proven to support deeper relaxation. Finally, every element of the audio is intentionally calm, steady, and pleasantly boring, perfect for helping your mind settle into sleep. Before we begin, I encourage you to subscribe so you always have a new video ready for bedtime. And in return for these videos, we ask just one small favor. Please like the video and tell us in the comments where you're listening from, your city, state, or country, and what time it is for you. It motivates our team, helps us understand what's working, and builds a worldwide community of people who fall asleep together each night. It's always inspiring to see how others use these videos. Now, find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let yourself unwind.
And now for the exciting conclusion. Okay, maybe semi-exciting conclusion. Okay, fine. A conclusion that will put you to sleep. It was a rock. Just a jagged gray rock about the size of a grapefruit. It looked like something you'd kick down a gravel driveway. It was heavy, cool to the touch, and entirely underwhelming. Attached to it was a sticky note that just read, "Found in Sector 7 Waiting Lounge. Do not shake." "Do not shake," Zephyr read aloud. "Well, obviously." He turned the rock over in his hands. It didn't look like tech. It didn't look like a relic. It looked like a geological paperweight. He pulled out his scanner to log it into the system. Item 492 Alpha, mineral deposit, non-reactive, boring. He set it down on the counter, a little harder than he intended. The rock clacked against the metal surface. Click. A hairline fracture of blue light appeared around the equator of the rock. Zephyr froze. Uh-oh. The rock didn't explode. Instead, it dissolved into a cloud of voxels, tiny cubes of light that swirled upward like a digital tornado. The voxels expanded, filling the room with the smell of ozone and wet fur. Zephyr scrambled back, tipping his stool over. "Bucket, come back." The light coalesced. It formed a shape, a very large shape. Standing in the middle of the lost and found was a beast from the nightmares of a feverish geneticist. It had the body of a panther, the scales of a crocodile, and 6 heads that looked like a mix between a wolf and a hammerhead shark. It was 12 feet long, glowing with a faint blue translucence, and it was currently growling at the coffee machine. "Hologram," Zephyr whispered to himself, his heart hammering against his ribs. "It's just a hologram, it's a pet rock, a high-tech Tamagotchi." He took a tentative step forward. "Here, kitty, is that what you are?" The beast turned all 6 heads toward him. It roared. The sound wasn't just audio. It was a directional sonic blast that rattled the fillings in Zephyr's teeth and blew the papers off his desk. "Okay, volume settings are high." "Noted," Zephyr yelled, diving behind the counter as a massive, holographic claw swiped through the space where his head had been. Technically, the claw couldn't hurt him. It was light. But the haptic feedback emitters in the projector were top tier. When the claw passed through the counter, the metal didn't break, but the sheer force of the displaced air knocked a stack of boxes over. The beast turned and bounded toward the glass front door of the office. Zephyr watched in horror as the hologram phased right through the glass and out into the busy spaceport terminal. No. Zephyr scrambled up, grabbing his master keycard. He sprinted out the door. The main terminal was usually a symphony of controlled chaos, announcements for departures, the beep of transport carts, the murmur of 1,000 species traveling. Now, it was just chaos. The holographic beast was leaping from the mezzanine level to the food court below. It landed on a table occupied by a family of gelatinous tourists from the Ooze Nebula, who shrieked and dissolved into puddles of panic. The beast roared again, projecting a terrifying illusion of fire breath that washed over a kiosk selling "I Visited Saturn" t-shirts. The fire wasn't real, but the vendor didn't know that. He was currently trying to beat out the imaginary flames with a discount hoodie. "It's not real," Zephyr screamed, waving his arms as he ran toward the crowd. "Nobody panic, it's a digital puppy." Nobody listened. A squad of station security guards were already taking positions behind a luggage cart. "Target locked," one shouted, raising a stun rifle. "Aim for the heads, all 6 of them." "Don't shoot it," Zephyr yelled, skidding to a halt in front of the guards. "It's a projector, you'll break the hardware." "Move, civilian. That thing is eating the pretzel stand." Zephyr looked. The beast was indeed chewing on the holographic representation of a pretzel cart, shaking it like a chew toy. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled. "Alert! Fauna breach in Sector 4. Animal control teams deployed. Please secure all small children and tasty snacks." The doors to the service elevators blasted open. But because this was a galactic hub, animal control wasn't just 2 guys with a net. It was a jurisdictional nightmare. From the left elevator emerged the station biological unit, armored humans with tranquilizer cannons. From the right elevator burst the Xenorangle squad, 3 reptilian aliens wielding energy lassos and looking for a fight. And dropping from the ceiling vents were the pest control drones, spinning buzzsaws that clearly didn't care about collateral damage. "Mine," hissed the lead reptilian possessively. "That is a snarling void panther. Its hide is worth 40 credits." "It's not real," Zephyr shouted, trying to be heard over the sirens. "Fire," the human commander ordered. A tranquilizer dart the size of a carrot sailed through the air. It passed straight through the beast's torso, because it was made of light, and thunked into the leg of the reptilian wrangler behind it. The reptile roared, pulled the dart out, and looked woozy. You dare," he slurred before toppling over like a felled tree. "Friendly fire," the reptiles screamed, charging the humans. It was a 3-way brawl. Humans versus aliens versus a hologram that was currently chasing a luggage drone around in circles. Zephyr stood in the eye of the hurricane. He watched a drone try to tase the hologram's tail, only to short-circuit itself on a soda fountain. He watched a security guard try to tackle the beast, passing through it and face-planting into a pile of luggage. "I hate this job," Zephyr said to the ceiling. "I hate it so much." But then he saw it, the rock. The projector unit, the jagged gray stone, wasn't inside the beast. It was scuttling. The rock had deployed tiny, spider-like legs and was skittering across the polished floor, terrified by the commotion, trying to hide under a bench. The projection was tethered to it. "Come here, you little menace," Zephyr muttered. He took off running. He dodged a flying energy lasso. He jumped over the sleeping body of the reptilian wrangler. He slid baseball-style across the floor, reaching for the rock just as a pest control drone swooped down, buzzsaw whirring. "No," Zephyr yelled, snatching the rock and curling his body around it. The drone pulled up at the last second, sensing a human obstruction. Zephyr squeezed the rock. He felt a small indentation, a button. He pressed it. Bloop! The roaring stopped. The fire vanished. The 6-headed nightmare beast winked out of existence, leaving only the smell of ozone and the very real confusion of 24 armed officers pointing weapons at thin air. Zephyr lay on the floor, clutching the rock to his chest. The terminal went silent. Everyone looked at him. He was lying in a puddle of spilled slushy, covered in sock lint, holding a rock. It's, contained, Zephyr wheezed, holding the rock up. False alarm, just a glitched projector. The security commander lowered his rifle. He looked at the chaos, the overturned tables, the unconscious alien, the terrified tourists. He looked at Zephyr. "You have 5 minutes to get that thing back to your office," the commander said, his voice tight, "before I arrest the rock." Zephyr didn't argue. He scrambled up and speed-walked back to the lost and found, clutching the projector so hard his knuckles turned white. Back in the safety of the office, Zephyr placed the rock inside a containment cage usually reserved for illegal tribbles. He locked it. Then he padlocked it. Then he put a piece of duct tape over the latch. "You sit there," Zephyr told the rock, "and you think about what you did." He collapsed into his chair, staring at the ceiling. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the familiar bone-deep exhaustion that came with the job. Why did he do this? Every day was a fresh hell. If it wasn't radioactive sludge, it was sapient mold. If it wasn't screaming weaponry, it was emotional baggage in the form of ancient relics. The pay was minimum wage. The benefits were non-existent. The coffee tasted like engine coolant. "I should quit," Zephyr said aloud. "I should go work on a moisture farm. Watch condensation happen. That sounds nice. Boring." The door chime rang. Zephyr didn't move. "We're closed," he groaned. "Unless you found a bag of money, go away." The door opened anyway. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been chewed up and spit out by the galaxy, which, coincidentally, was exactly how Zephyr felt. The man was wearing a flight suit that was patched more with duct tape than fabric. He had a scruffy beard, tired eyes, and he held his helmet in hands that were stained with grease. He looked like a spacer, one of the long-haul pilots who spent months alone in the black, pushing freight between the stars. I heard a commotion," the man said, his voice raspy like he hadn't used it in days. "They said something about a hologram, a monster." Zephyr sat up slowly. He looked at the man, then at the cage. "Yeah," Zephyr said, "a monster, 6 heads, breath like a fusion reactor." The pilot's face crumpled, not with fear but with relief. "Bessie," he whispered. "Bessie?" Zephyr asked. "She's a Mark-IV hard light companion," the pilot explained, stepping into the room. He looked at the cage where the rock sat dormant. I lost her 3 cycles ago during a layover. My ship. It gets quiet, real quiet. It's just me and the nav computer out there." The pilot walked over to the cage. He looked at the rock with a tenderness that Zephyr usually saw reserved for children or large piles of cash. "Can I?" the pilot asked. Zephyr sighed. He got up, walked over, and peeled off the duct tape. He unlocked the padlock. He opened the cage. "If she eats you," Zephyr warned, "I'm clocking out." The pilot reached in. He didn't grab the rock, he held his hand out, palm up. "Here, girl, come on, Bessie, it's Papa." The rock twitched. The spider legs emerged, but this time they weren't skittering in panic. The rock climbed onto the pilot's rough palm. Click! The blue light fractured out again. Zephyr flinched, reaching for his broom. But the monster didn't appear. Instead, the voxels swirled around the pilot's legs. They didn't form the 6-headed beast this time. They formed a small, slobbery, tail-wagging puppy version of the monster. It was still ugly. It still had too many eyes and scales. But it was rubbing its holographic head against the pilot's boots, making happy chirping noises. The pilot fell to his knees, burying his face in the digital fur. The hologram ignored the laws of physics to nuzzle him back, the haptic sensors creating the illusion of warmth and weight. "I missed you, girl," the pilot choked out, laughing through wet eyes. "I thought I was gonna have to fly the Kessel Run alone." Zephyr watched them. He watched the glowing blue monster interact with the dirty, tired human. He saw the loneliness evaporate from the room, replaced by a palpable sense of connection. The rock suddenly emitted a new sound, a joyous, high-pitched whistle. And then, for no tactical reason whatsoever, the projector shot a stream of holographic confetti into the air. Bright, shimmering, multicolored paper rained down on the office, dissolving just before it hit the floor. The pilot looked up at Zephyr, smiling through the illusionary storm. "She does that when she's happy, sorry about the mess." "It's digital," Zephyr said, leaning against the counter, feeling a smile tug at the corner of his mouth despite himself. "Easiest cleanup I've had all day." The pilot stood up, lifting the rock and the attached hologram onto his shoulder. The beast licked his ear. "Thanks," the pilot said. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled credit chip. "I don't have much, but—" "Keep it," Zephyr said, waving him off. "Administrative fee was waived. Just keep her on a leash until you get to the ship, yeah. You terrified an entire station." "Will do," the pilot saluted. "Come on, Bessie, let's go home." He walked out the door, the glowing blue puppy trotting on air beside him, leaving a trail of fading digital sparkles. Zephyr stood alone in the office. The confetti was gone, the socks were incinerated, the silence was back. He looked at the empty space on the counter. He looked at the grime on the floor. He looked at his reflection in the dark glass of the door, tired, messy, underpaid. He picked up his lukewarm soda and took a sip. It was flat. "Well," Zephyr murmured to the empty room, "that sucked slightly less than usual." He sat down, pulled the next box toward him, and opened the lid. Inside was a single, perfectly preserved 20th century rubber duck holding a detonator. Zephyr stared at it. The duck stared back. "Bucket," Zephyr yelled, reaching for the intercom. "Get back in here." The psychic confetti was the worst part. It wasn't just that the fragmented illusions of the Pet Rocks reunion were cluttering the floor. It was that every time Zephyr swept a pile of the shimmering dust into his pan, he was forced to telepathically relive the rock's sheer, granite joy. It was emotionally exhausting to feel that much second-hand affection for a mineral, especially when he was running on 3 hours of sleep and a breakfast bar that tasted faintly of recycled cardboard and despair. He pushed the broom with the weary resignation of a man who had realized that the glamorous life of space travel was mostly just janitorial duty in zero gravity, minus the zero gravity, which had been budget cut from the Lost and found office to save on power. Just as he managed to corral the last of the glittering mental projections into the trash chute, the pneumatic tube system behind the main desk let out a sound like a dying bagpipe and vomited a canister onto the linoleum. A moment later, the office door slid open with a hiss that sounded suspiciously sarcastic. Supervisor Glim stood there. Glim was a bureaucrat of indeterminate species, mostly because he was always covered in a gray envirosuit that smelled of stale toner and antiseptic. "Zephyr," Glim's voice crackled through his external speakers, bypassing the air and vibrating directly in Zephyr's molars. "Excellent work with the granitic sentimentalist. The reunion metrics are up 0.04%. Zephyr leaned on his broom, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Thanks, sir. It was touch and go there for a minute. I thought the rock was going to weep gravel on the carpet." "Indeed. Efficiency is key," Glim said. He stepped forward, a heavy metallic object in his gloved hands. It looked like a plaque, but it hummed with a low, ominous frequency. Corporate has decided to award you the Order of the Golden Retrieval. It is the highest honor a Tier 4 custodial reclamation officer can receive. Zephyr reached out tentatively. Oh, wow, does it come with a raise? It comes with weight, Glim said, dropping the object into Zephyr's hands. Zephyr's knees buckled. The plaque weighed at least 80 pounds. It was made of collapsed star metal. Oof, sir, it's heavy. It represents the burden of lost souls, Zephyr. You must carry it, figuratively and now literally. Do not put it down on the desk. The desk is not rated for that density. Or the floor. Keep holding it until your shift ends. It builds character and core strength. Glim turned on his heel. Oh, and the intake chute is backed up. Sector 7 had a gravity failure during a frantic evacuation. Expect oddities. With that, Glim left, leaving Zephyr holding an 80-pound award that felt less like a commendation and more like an anchor designed to drown him in his own misery. He looked around frantically for a place to stash it, eventually heaving it onto a structural support beam in the corner which groaned in protest but held. He didn't have time to admire the award or ice his lower back. The pneumatic tube bonged again, louder this time, followed by the conveyor belt kicking into life. The belt, usually a sluggish stream of umbrellas and datapads, sped up to a frantic whir. The first item shot out of the chute and skidded across the reception desk, nearly beaming Zephyr in the forehead. It was a wristwatch. Or at least, it looked like a wristwatch if wristwatches were designed by Salvador Dali after a week-long bender in the fourth dimension. The face of the watch was a swirling vortex of mercury, and instead of numbers, it had tiny, screaming faces that shifted as the hands moved. Zephyr picked it up with a pair of lead-lined tongs. He had learned early on, never touch the jewelry. Jewelry in a spaceport was usually cursed, radioactive, or a dormant egg. Item 409 beta, he muttered, speaking into his recorder. Timepiece, non-Euclidean geometry, ticking sound is syncopated. He set the watch down on a sorting tray next to his lunch, a perfectly ripe, yellow banana he had been saving for a moment of peace. He turned to grab a tag, and when he looked back 3 seconds later, the banana was black, shriveled, and turning to dust. Zephyr blinked. He looked at the watch. The swirling mercury face seemed to wink. He grabbed a fresher apple from his bag and placed it near the watch. In 5 seconds, the apple wrinkled, browned, and collapsed into a pile of compost. Okay, Zephyr whispered. Time dilation field, short range, accelerates entropy. Great, just what I need. A watch that murders snacks. He keyed the station-wide intercom. He had to be careful. If he announced time machine, he'd have every physicist, bounty hunter, and lottery loser in the terminal storming his office. Attention, travelers, Zephyr's voice boomed through the station, echoing off the vaulted ceilings of the departure lounge. We have a found item in the reclamation center, a chronologically aggressive accessory. If you are currently experiencing time faster than those around you, or if your left arm has aged significantly more than your right arm, please report to the desk. Please bring photographic ID from your current timeline. He released the button and sighed. Before he could even gauge the reaction, the conveyor belt roared again. This time a helmet rolled out. It was a vintage exploration model, bulbous and brassy, with a cracked visor. It looked like something a deep-sea diver would wear on Mars in the 1950s. It sat on the desk, silent and imposing. Zephyr reached for it, intending to check the collar for a name tag. As his fingers brushed the metal, the helmet inhaled. It was a distinct, audible intake of breath, the sound of a great pair of lungs filling up with air. Zephyr snatched his hand back. The The helmet belted out a high tenor note that shattered Zephyr's coffee mug and sent shards of ceramic skittering across the desk. Figaro, Figaro, Figaro. It was singing The Barber of Seville asterisk. Badly. The pitch was oscillating wildly between flat and sharp, vibrating with enough force to rattle Zephyr's teeth in his gums. Quiet, Zephyr circled the desk, trying to find an off switch. Mute, pause, cease audio. LA, GIOIA. The helmet screamed, vibrating across the table like an electric football player. Zephyr grabbed a heavy conductive blanket and threw it over the helmet. The singing became muffled but no less enthusiastic, sounding like a drunk opera singer trapped in a linen closet. Thump. Another item hit the desk. Zephyr looked up, distracted by the muffled aria. It was a jar. A simple glass mason jar, the kind one might use for pickles. Inside, however, was not a pickle. It was a blob of bioluminescent purple jelly, suspended in a clear liquid that defied gravity. The jelly pulsed with a soft, neon heartbeat. Zephyr narrowed his eyes. Please don't be a bomb, please don't be a god. He leaned in close. The jelly formed a pseudopod and pressed it against the glass. It looked like a tiny hand. Zephyr, against his better judgment and training module 4B, don't bond with the biologicals, pressed his finger against the glass in return. The jar lid unscrewed itself. No, stay, Zephyr commanded, pointing a finger. The jelly ignored him. It flowed out of the jar like liquid smoke, bypassing the laws of surface tension. It hit the desk and didn't splatter, it bounced. It chirped, a digital 8-bit sound, and immediately slithered towards Zephyr's computer console. Don't you dare, Zephyr warned, diving for the purple blob. He missed. The jelly was fast. It shot into the ventilation slats of the terminal. Instantly, the screens flickered. The standard blue background of the lost and found database turned a pulsating disco purple. The text on the screen began to rewrite itself. Inventory update. Everything is jelly now. It's rewriting the manifest, Zephyr yelled to no one. The muffled helmet on the desk hit a crescendo, vibrating so hard the blanket slid off. Figaro su, Figaro giu. Zephyr was now fighting a three-front war. The watch was rapidly aging the varnish off his desk, creating a circle of rotting wood. The helmet was deafening him with Rossini. The jelly was hacking the station's mainframe to declare itself emperor of inventory. He scrambled over the desk, grabbing the helmet with one hand while typing frantically with the other to firewall the jelly. The helmet was heavy and felt warm, as if a ghost were actually inside it, singing its heart out. Zephyr found himself inadvertently humming along in a panicked baritone, trying to harmonize just to stop the dissonance from giving him a migraine. Figaro, Zephyr bellowed, slamming a containment field command into the keyboard. Bravo, the helmet screamed back. The door to the office slid open. A line of people stood there. They stared at the sweaty man holding a singing helmet, standing next to a rotting patch of desk, while purple lights flashed rhythmically on his computer screen. "Is this the line for lost luggage?" asked a small, reptilian woman holding a handbag made of scales. "Currently, this is the line for madness," Zephyr shouted over the opera. "Please hold." He hit the intercom button again, his voice ragged. "Attention, owner of a vocal exploration helmet. It is currently performing Act 1 in my office. If you do not claim it, I will attempt to duet with it, and nobody wants that. Also, to the owner of the sapient grape jelly currently trying to order 5,000 tons of sugar via the station logistics network. Your pet is committing credit card fraud. Please advise." The chaos outside the door grew. The broadcast had done its job, but too well. The promise of spectacle drew a crowd. First into the fray was a tall, imposing figure clad in obsidian armor that seemed to absorb the light. He had 4 arms and a face that was mostly mandibles. He stormed up to the counter, knocking aside a velvet rope. "I claim the noise," the warrior boomed. "The screaming metal head, it sings the war song of my people. It is the asterisk cry of the agonized void." Zephyr wrestled the helmet down, holding it like a struggling toddler. "This is the barber of Seville. Unless your people's war song involves a lot of Italian hairdressing, I don't think this is yours." The warrior leaned in, his mandibles clicking. "Do not insult the crook, that sound. It is the sound of a dying son screaming in E minor. It is mine." "It's Rossini," Zephyr argued, sweating. The helmet switched tracks. It began singing asterisk Bohemian Rhapsody. "Mama just killed a man." The Kruk warrior paused. "Ah, the ballad of the matriarch slayer, very honorable, I will take it." "Do you have a receipt?" Zephyr demanded, trying to keep the watch from aging the warrior's armor into rust. He used his foot to slide the time-dilated watch further down the counter. "Receipts are for the weak. Possession is 9/10 of the galactic conquest." While Zephyr argued jurisprudence with the warlord, the jelly escalated its assault. The office lights began to strobe. The automated announcement system clicked on, the smooth, robotic female voice replaced by a wet, squelching series of synthesized burps that somehow sounded like Morse code. "Blorp squish glug." "Hey," Zephyr shouted at the ceiling. "Language." A new figure pushed through the crowd. It was a frantic cyborg, half chrome, half flesh, wires trailing from his scalp like dreadlocks. "I am here for the chrono anchor," he yelled, his ocular implant zooming in and out. "My timeline is collapsing. I had lunch yesterday tomorrow." "The watch," Zephyr pointed to the rotting spot on the desk. "Take it. But careful, it turned an apple into cider vinegar in 6 seconds. The cyborg lunged for the watch. At the same moment, the Kruk warlord lunged for the helmet. Zephyr was in the middle. He ducked. The cyborg grabbed the watch. The Kruk grabbed the helmet. "Mamma mia," the helmet screeched as the Kruk shook it. "Finally," the cyborg wept, strapping the watch to his wrist. He immediately vanished, only to reappear 3 feet to the left, looking 5 years older and sporting a beard. "It works. I'm back, or forward, I don't know." "Get out of my office," Zephyr yelled, grabbing a mop to defend himself against the jelly which was now oozing out of the air vent, having grown significantly larger. It was the size of a beach ball now and glowing with a menacing fuchsia hue. It ate the Wi-Fi, Zephyr realized with horror. It's metabolizing heavy data. The jelly let out a low rumble that vibrated the floorboards. It formed a mouth. "Buffering," the jelly roared. The crowd screamed and scrambled back. The Kruk warrior drew a plasma blade. "A beast of pure lag, disgusting. I shall slay it." "No slaying in the lost and found." Zephyr vaulted over the counter. He tackled the jelly. It was like tackling a lukewarm waterbed. He bounced off, covered in sticky purple residue. The jelly laughed, a sound like dial-up internet connecting. It surged toward the Kruk warrior, attracted by the high-tech energy signature of the plasma blade. "Zephyr to security." Zephyr screamed into his lapel comms, which were currently playing elevator music thanks to the jelly's hacking. "I have a hostile blob situation. It's eating bandwidth and getting aggressive." Suddenly, a high-pitched whistle cut through the noise. It was a specific, piercing tone, like a dog whistle made of crystal. The chaos froze. The helmet stopped singing in the middle of a Galileo. The Kruk warrior paused, blade raised. Even the jelly stopped pulsating, its pseudomouth closing over the word download. Standing at the terrifyingly open doorway, overshadowed by the fleeing crowd, was a child. The child was small, wearing an oversized yellow raincoat and rain boots, despite the fact that they were on a space station where weather was a scheduled event. The child had pale blue skin and eyes that held galaxies within the irises. In their hand was a silver whistle. "Binky," the child whispered. The voice was small, trembling, but it carried a weight of absolute devastation. The glowing purple jelly shuddered. It turned its amorphous body toward the child. The menacing fuchsia glow softened to a gentle, warm lavender. "Binky," the child cried out, dropping the whistle and opening their arms. The jelly let out a happy chirp, *ping*, and launched itself across the room. It flew past the Kruk warrior, over Zephyr's head, and landed squarely in the child's arms. The impact knocked the kid back a step, but they hugged the blob tight, burying their face in the goo. The jelly cooed, dissolving its digital armor. The station lights stopped flickering. The computer screen returned to normal, though the inventory list still suspiciously contained the item, love. Zephyr pulled himself up from the floor, wiping sludge from his uniform. He watched the reunion, his heart doing that traitorous squeezing thing again. He hated when the job made him feel things other than annoyance. The Kruk warrior lowered his weapon. "The beast, it submits." "It's a pet," Zephyr panted, leaning against the counter. "It's just a kid's pet." The child looked up at Zephyr, huge eyes wet with tears. "Thank you, mister. Binky gets hungry for data when he's scared. I hope he didn't eat your internet history." Zephyr paled. Let's not check that." "Here," the child said, fishing a soggy, slime-covered credit chip out of the jelly's mass. "My dad said to give you this for the trouble." Zephyr took the chip. It was sticky. It was gross. It was also a platinum galactic credit marker, worth more than his annual salary. Thanks," Zephyr stammered. "Just keep him on a leash or a firewall." The child giggled, turned, and walked away. The jelly perched on their shoulder, happily emitting soft Wi-Fi signals to the passers-by. Zephyr slumped against the desk. The Kruk warrior was still standing there, holding the singing helmet. So the warrior rumbled, about the singing head. "Take it," Zephyr waved his hand weakly. "I don't care, just take it. If it sings cat's asterisk, don't blame me." The warrior nodded solemnly, tucked the helmet under one of his forearms, and marched out, the helmet muffledly singing memory into his armpit. Zephyr exhaled a breath he felt like he'd been holding since Tuesday. Silence. Sweet, beautiful silence returned to the office. The watch was gone, the helmet was gone, the jelly was gone. He looked at the clock on the wall. He had been on shift for 45 minutes. "Okay," he said to the empty room. "Okay, I can do this. The rush is over. It's going to be a quiet afternoon." He bent down to pick up his broom. As he did, the floor began to vibrate. It wasn't the helmet. It wasn't a jelly rumble. It was the vibration of a stampede. Zephyr slowly stood up and looked out the glass front of his office. Down the long corridor of the spaceport concourse, a mass of people was moving. No, not just people. Everything. There were tourists, droids, floating brain jars, sentient clouds, and what looked like a delegation of diplomatic yetis. They were all holding things, broken things, weird things, things that smoked and things that screamed. And at the front of the mob, running with a desperate sprint, was a flight attendant Zephyr recognized from the Gate 9 luxury cruiser. She burst into the office, gasping for air. "Zephyr," she screamed. "Help! The cargo hold on the SS Pandemonium just ruptured. The containment seals broke on the antiquities of the damned collection." Zephyr looked past her. The mob was descending. He saw a man wrestling a carpet that was trying to fly away. He saw a woman holding a toaster that was shooting lasers. He saw a small dog that was levitating 3 feet off the ground and speaking fluent Latin. Zephyr looked at his broom. He looked at the commendation plaque on the structural beam. He looked at the Employee of the Month spot that was currently located in the vacuum of space. He grabbed the closed sign. He reached for the door. But before he could flip the sign, a tentacle slapped against the glass. Then a robotic claw, then a spectral hand. The intercom buzzed. It was Supervisor Glim. Zephyr, Glim's voice droned. "We're detecting a slight uptick in foot traffic. Remember to smile. The commendation depends on it." Zephyr stared at the horde pressing against the glass, their faces and pseudopods mashed against the transparency in a grotesque collage of need and panic. The door groaned under the pressure. Zephyr straightened his tie. He grabbed his clipboard. He took a bite of the only remaining food item that hadn't been aged to dust or run over by a blob, a packet of dehydrated nutrient paste. "Bring it on," he whispered. The glass cracked. The door gave way. And Zephyr, the guardian of the misplaced, the shepherd of the forgotten, the curator of the cursed, stepped forward into the avalanche. The air in the Department of Reclamations and Ephemeral Objects didn't just smell like old Jim's socks. It smelled like the concept of abandonment had been distilled into a cologne and sprayed liberally over a pile of wet dogs. Zephyr rubbed his temples, the friction doing absolutely nothing to erase the headache that had been squatting behind his eyes since the start of the 3rd shift. He looked at the days since last accidental singularity counter on the wall. It currently read 0. It usually read 0. To be fair, sometimes it read -3, but that was only when the tachyon shuckers came through town and messed with the local causality loops. Zephyr, a human male of average height and indeterminate exhaustion level, leaned over the scuffed countertop. His name tag, which was supposed to say manager, had been vandalized by a gravity weevil to read manager, which he felt was technically accurate but spiritually reductive. He tapped the microphone of the intercom system, sending a screech of feedback through the waiting room that caused 3 species of crystalline entities to shatter and a sleeping Wookiee to fart itself awake. "Attention," Zephyr droned, his voice flat enough to use as a shelf. "Ticket number 402. If you are the owner of a sentient, aggressive handbag that is currently chewing on the leg of my office chair, please approach the counter. Also, stop feeding it breath mints. It's making the biting minty fresh, which is weirdly intimate." The queue that stretched out the door and into the main concourse of Nebula Station Zeta was not a happy line. It was a living, breathing, oozing testament to the universal truth that people, regardless of how many tentacles or eyes they possessed, were terrible at keeping track of their stuff. The room was a pressure cooker of anxiety. On the left, a frantic mother from the Pleiades sector was weeping over a lost diaper bag that contained the genetic key to her planet's nuclear defense system. On the right, a group of drunken star miners were arguing that they had lost their dignity and demanded Zephyr check the back shelves for it. But today was special. Today, the universe had decided to funnel its most chaotic elements into Zephyr's 12x12 workspace. The counter drifted with the accumulated debris of 1,000 layovers. Zephyr looked down at the 3 priority items sitting on his desk. They were the trifecta of trouble, the holy trinity of headaches. First, a pocket watch that wasn't ticking but was instead vibrating with the low hum of a temporal displacement engine. Second, a chromium-plated helmet that had been singing a continuous, high-pitched aria from a Puccini opera for 6 hours. And third, a glass jar that had been sealed with duct tape, which was now empty, save for some glistening, translucent slime on the rim. The escaped jelly. Okay, Zephyr muttered to himself, adjusting his heavy rubber gloves. Let's do this. The blast doors slid open and the chaos didn't walk in, it surged. A tall, spindly creature made entirely of swaying kelp-like strands rushed the counter. This was Ambassador Florix of the Hydro Kingdoms. "My chronometer," Florix gurgled, his voice sounding like bubbles escaping a sinking ship. "I am late for a meeting that happened yesterday. If I do not have it, I will be late for the meeting I am supposed to have tomorrow, which is actually 5 minutes ago." "Easy, Swamp Thing," Zephyr said, sliding the vibrating pocket watch across the counter with a pair of tongs. "Don't touch the dial until you're in a shielded zone, or you'll turn into a toddler." Florix snatched the watch, and immediately the localized time field reacted to his biological stress hormones. The air around the ambassador shimmered. In a flash of violet light, Florix accelerated. He didn't just grab the watch, he grabbed it 70 times in a single second. He became a blur of kelp. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," he said, the words overlapping into a high-pitched squeal, zooming around the small lobby like a hummingbird on espresso. Before Zephyr could tell him to slow down, the second claimant shoved their way forward. It was a burly, stone-skinned throg, wearing a leather jacket that looked like it was made from the hide of a dragon. "The helmet," the throg grunted, slamming a fist the size of a honey-baked ham onto the counter. "My mother-in-law, she's inside it." Zephyr blinked. He looked at the singing chrome helmet. It was currently hitting a high sea that was cracking the lenses of his safety goggles. "Your mother-in-law is a helmet." "No, stupid, she possesses technology. She uploaded her consciousness into the helmet to critique my piloting skills during the Kessel run. I took it off to eat a sandwich and she wandered off." The throg looked genuinely terrified. "If she stops singing, it means she's judging. Give it here quickly." Zephyr pushed the singing helmet forward. The throg grabbed it, but as his rock-like fingers touched the metal, the aria stopped abruptly, replaced by a digital voice screeching, "You call that a landing? You parked like a flabby mollusk." The throg winced, clutching the helmet to his chest. "I'm sorry, Mother, I'm sorry." But the chaos was just heating up. Florix, the time-accelerated kelp man, was zooming in circles so fast he was creating a vortex. The throg was weeping while a helmet berated him. And then, from the ceiling tiles above, a globule of neon-purple ooze dripped squarely onto Zephyr's nose. The escaped jelly. Zephyr went cross-eyed, looking at the sentient snot on his face. "Oh, hello." A shriek pierced the din. "Bubbles." A small, gelatinous blob child, no bigger than a beach ball, bounced through the crowd. It was the owner. The jelly on Zephyr's nose quivered, then launched itself off his face, soaring through the air in a majestic arc of slime. It landed with a wet asterisk thwack right in the center of the crying throg's back. Now here is a fun fact about throg physiology. They are violently allergic to silicate-based gels. The throg stiffened. His stone skin turned a bright, alarming shade of pink. "It burns," he bellowed, dropping the singing helmet. The helmet rolled across the floor, singing the ride of the Valkyries now, sensing the battle. The time-dilated Ambassador Florix, moving too fast to stop, tripped over the rolling helmet. He went airborne, flying into the arms of the Pleiadian mother, who screamed and threw the diaper bag. The bag hit the floor, and the genetic key to the nuclear defense system activated. "Warning," a pleasant robotic voice announced. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. You have 30 seconds. Have a nice day." The lobby went silent, save for the singing helmet and the frantic ticking of the time watch. Zephyr sighed. He looked at the ceiling. He didn't get paid enough for this, but then again, nobody got paid enough to die in a lost and found surrounded by alien dampness. "Nobody panic," Zephyr shouted, vaulting over the counter. "I've got a coupon for free frozen yogurt for anyone who doesn't vaporize in the next 20 seconds. He grabbed the diaper bag, punched in the universal abort code, which was 0000 because military contractors always cut corners, and the red light faded. Crisis averted. Now group hug. Everyone come on. It was the only way to stop the chain reaction. The jelly child hugged the throg's leg, the slime acting as a topical ointment that neutralized the allergy. The ambassador, slowed down by the sheer mass of bodies pressing against him, returned to normal time. The helmet, muffled by the collective embrace of 4 different species, finally stopped singing and muttered, "Well, at least you're making friends." They stood there for a moment, a tangled mass of limbs, tentacles, and slime in the center of the lost and found. Zephyr was sandwiched between a perspiring rock man and a very apologetic kelp monster. "I found my watch," Florix whimpered. "I found my mother-in-law," the throg sniffed. "I found Bubbles," the blobchild gurgled. "And I," Zephyr groaned, extricating himself from the pile, "found a new stain on my vest. Get out of here, you lunatics. Fill out the satisfaction survey on your way out." As the crowd dispersed, wiping tears and slime from their varied appendages, Zephyr leaned back against the counter, heart-hammering. He thought that was it. He thought the rush was over. But the universe is a comedian, and it loves a callback. A low rumble started in the back room. The shelves, usually sturdy industrial metal, began to rattle. The grand lost item event had begun. See, inside a spaceport lost and found, you don't just have physical objects. You have psychic residue. You have the emotional weight of 1,000 "oh no, I left my favorite sweater" moments. And sometimes, when the critical mass of misplaced sentimentality gets too high, physics decides to take a coffee break. The door to the back storage room blew off its hinges. Pouring out of the storage bay wasn't a monster. It was a vortex. It was a swirling tornado of the most dangerous substance known to sentient life: miscellaneous junk. Thousands of left socks, unpaired earrings, charging cables that didn't fit any known device, and umbrellas that only opened halfway swirled into the lobby. They were coalescing. The friction of 1,000,000 lost items rubbing together created a static charge that made Zephyr's hair stand up like a dandelion. "Boss," yelled 7K, Zephyr's droid assistant, who had been hiding in the broom closet. "The entropy index is spiking. The accumulation of unresolved lost items is creating a singularity of annoyance." "I see that 7," Zephyr yelled over the roar of wind. A radioactive lunchbox whizzed past his ear. The vortex in the center of the room grew larger. It was sucking in light. It was sucking in sound. It was sucking in the reality of the spaceport. The walls of the office began to stretch like taffy. Outside the glass, passers-by in the terminal froze, drawn toward the window by the sheer gravitational pull of the lost items. The vortex began to take shape. It formed a giant, shifting face made of old fedoras and sunglasses. It opened a mouth made of discarded retainers and roared. The sound was the collective groan of everyone who has ever patted their pockets and felt nothing. "I am the unclaimed," the entity bellowed. "I am the forgotten. Where is my other sock?" Zephyr grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from being pulled in. He looked at 7K. "It wants closure. It's a manifestation of abandonment issues." "How do we fight it?" 7K shrieked, clutching a vacuum cleaner. "Therapy." "No time," Zephyr looked around. He needed something to neutralize the angst. He needed the ultimate object of finding. He scanned the shelves. There, in a dusty box marked "Do Not Open, Extremely Wholesome," sat the artifact. It was a puppy. Well, not a real puppy. It was a holographic simulation of a puppy from the Cygnus sector, programmed to be the perfect reunion instigator. It had been sitting there for 3 years, waiting for a child who never came. It was a concentrated ball of found energy. But he couldn't just throw a hollow puppy at a tornado of trash. He needed a delivery system. Zephyr looked at the pile of unclaimed umbrellas. 7, the umbrellas, they're shielding the core. I don't understand. Just trust me. Grab the bucket of bouncy balls. Zephyr grabbed a handful of bouncy balls, item 8944, confiscated from a zero-G juggler, and hurled them at the vortex. They ricocheted wildly, creating a chaotic geometric web that confused the entity. The face of Fedora's paused, its eyes of sunglasses shifting. Distraction, the monster roared. Now Zephyr grabbed the hollow puppy generator. It was shaped like a bone. He armed it. Hey, giant trash monster. The vortex turned toward him. I am not trash, I am vintage. Whatever, you want to be found. Catch. Zephyr hurled the hollow puppy device into the maw of the storm. The device detonated. A blast of pure golden light erupted from within the tornado of socks. A holographic sound, the distinct asterisk yip of a happy dog, echoed through the station. The vortex froze, the socks stopped spinning, the charging cables went limp. From the light, a giant, spectral image of the puppy appeared, wagging a tail that spanned dimensions. It looked at the monster of lost things, tilted its head, and licked the face of Fedora's. The tension broke. The unclaimed entity didn't explode, it melted. The aggression drained out of it. The socks separated, drifting gently to the floor like cotton snow. The umbrellas closed. The sunglasses clattered down in a heap. The reality-warping storm dissipated, leaving the office covered in 3 feet of debris. The crowd outside the glass pressed their faces against the window, cheering. They didn't know what had happened, but it looked impressive. Zephyr collapsed onto a pile of wool coats. He breathed heavily, staring up at the flickering fluorescent lights. 7, he wheezed. Remind me to file the paperwork for a reality stabilization bonus. Already done, sir, the droid chirped, rolling out of the closet. I also took the liberty of ordering pizza, pineapple and anchovy. The only toppings nobody claimed, so they were free. Zephyr laughed, a dry, raspy sound. Perfect. The door to the office slid open again. But this wasn't a customer. It was Director Vrox, the station administrator. He was a gelatinous cube in a suit, sliding into the room with an air of bureaucratic menace. Zephyr, Vrox burped, his voice resonating from his center. We detected a Class 5 reality breach in your sector. We also detected that you resolved it using bouncy balls and a holographic dog. Zephyr sat up, brushing a stray earring off his shoulder. Standard operating procedure, sir. Improvisational logistics. Vrox rippled. He extended a pseudopod and picked up a single argyle sock. You have a gift, Zephyr. Most people look at this room and see junk. You see potential. The board has discussed it. We want to promote you. Zephyr's ears perked up. Promote me, like to an office with a window, maybe some natural light. Better, Vrox said. We want to make you the system-wide VP of anomalous containment. You'd be on the flagship. Nice uniform. Laser pistol. No more smelling wet Wookiee fur. Zephyr looked at the director. Then he looked around his office. He looked at the mountain of socks. He looked at the singing helmet, which was currently humming a soft lullaby to itself in the corner. He looked at the spot where the throg and the jelly had hugged. He realized something stupid. He realized he knew where everything in this pile came from. He knew that the red scarf belonged to the old lady who visited on Tuesdays. and she'd be back for it. He knew the rusty wrench belonged to the mechanic who kept the life support running. This wasn't just junk. It was a library of people's lives, momentarily paused, and if he left, they'd probably replace him with an incinerator algorithm. "No," Zephyr said, surprising himself. Vrox bubbled, "Excuse me." I said no. I'm not a VP kind of guy. I don't like laser pistols. I have a symbiotic relationship with this mess. Zephyr stood up, dusting off his pants. Besides, if I leave, who's going to feed the aggressive handbag? As if on cue, the handbag under the desk growled and snapped at Vrox's pseudopod. Vrox recoiled. "Very well," the director sniffed, "but we are increasing your budget, and we are getting you a new chair, one that is bite-proof." "Deal," Zephyr said. As the director slid out, Zephyr turned to 7K, "All right, 7. Let's sort this mess. Socks in the left bin, dangerous artifacts in the lead box, and if you find any sandwich crusts, check for pulse before you throw them away." Zephyr walked to the window and flipped the sign from "closed due to apocalypse" back to "open." He cracked his knuckles. Running the spaceport lost and found sucked. It was dirty, dangerous, and smelled like obscure cheese. But as a tiny, three-eyed alien walked in, holding a drawing of a lost teddy bear and looking up at Zephyr with hope in its dilated pupils, Zephyr knew the truth. It sucked, but somebody had to be the lighthouse in the ocean of forgotten things. And hey, sometimes you get free pineapple pizza. "Can I help you?" Zephyr asked with a genuine smile. "Did you lose something, or are you just here for the ambience?" The alien squeaked. Zephyr listened, nodded, and reached under the counter. "Lucky for you, kid, I speak teddy bear." And so the shift continued.